We believe in the promise of America, and we're ready to fight for it. Because when we fight, we win. So join us.
It's a fitting coda to President Joe Biden's address to the nation last night, explaining his decision to end his run for a second term and endorse as vice president. Here's a bit of what the president had to say.
I've decided the best way forward is to pass the torch to a new generation. It's the best way to unite our nation. You know, there is a time and a place for long years of experience in public life. There's also a time and a place for new voices, fresh voices, yes, younger voices. And that time and place is now.
That time and place is now, he said. Having galvanized the Democratic base and sent the Trump team scrambling in search of something, anything effective with which to attack Kamala Harris, the president's anointed successor, Kamala Harris, has been taking a message grounded in this idea of freedom and a fight for the future and the rule of law to the campaign trail, with 4 events in 4 states in 4 days. Her latest appearance, a speech to the American Federation of Teachers, where she said the ex-president would return America to a dark past. Watch that.
In this moment across our nation, we witness a full-on attack on hard-won, hard-fought freedoms. While you teach students about democracy and representative government, extremists attack the sacred freedom to vote. While you try to create safe and welcoming places where our children can learn, extremists attack our freedom to live safe from gun violence. They have the nerve to tell teachers to strap on a gun in the classroom, while they refuse to pass common sense gun safety laws. And while you teach students about our nation's past, these extremists attack the freedom to learn and acknowledge our nation's true and full history, including book bans. Book bans in this year of our Lord 2024. And on these last two issues, just think about it. So we want to ban assault weapons, and they want to ban books. Can you imagine? In this moment, we are in a fight for our most fundamental freedoms. And to this room of leaders, I say, bring it on. Bring it on. Bring it on.
President Joe Biden officially passing the torch to Vice President Kamala Harris in a campaign that sees the presidential election as a battle for freedom, and the future is where we start today. Former U.S. Senator, host of MSNBC's How to Win 2024 podcast, Claire McCaskill is back. Also joining us, MSNBC contributor and columnist Charlie Sykes is here, an MSNBC political analyst and senior opinion writer and columnist for the Boston Globe. Kim Eckenstor is also back. Claire, she has grabbed these 2 pillars in terms of branding these early days of her candidacy, and they are freedom and future. She is, I think, the most disciplined candidate I've ever watched. She's got her crowds chanting spontaneously, "We won't go back." This is a stellar start.
Yes, to say she was ready is an understatement. I think people for way too long, and we've talked about this before, for way too long, undermined Kamala Harris in ways I never really quite understood. As somebody who knows her well and worked alongside of her in the United States Senate, and frankly, one of the things I find most fun about this is the struggle the Republicans are having. The things they are pointing out as negatives, the online community is taking and turning into a positive, like laughter. You know, I think our country is ready for joy instead of grievance. We are ready for lightness instead of dark. We are ready for all of the things she's bringing to this campaign. And you're right, this organic chant, I don't think, maybe people remember that, you know, all fired up, ready to go was organic. That happened organically in the Obama campaign. I was fascinated by "We Won't Go Back," which happened organically in her first speech as a candidate. I predict "We Won't Go Back" will, in fact, be the chant that sticks around from now until the first Tuesday in November.
Charlie Sykes, let me show you some more of her just hammering this future versus past message. This is, again, from her speech today.
Today, we face a choice between two very different visions for our nation. One focused on the future, and the other focused on the past. And we are fighting for the future. And in our vision of the future, we see a place where every person has the opportunity not just to get by, but to get ahead. A future where no child has to grow up in poverty, where every senior can retire with dignity.
It's pretty clear what this campaign's about.
No, it's really dramatic. You know, look, this is going to be a tough campaign. She's still got a lot of headwinds here, but I've been thinking all day long where we were 1 week ago, right now, sitting in Milwaukee, what the mood was, what the mood among Republicans was, and what the mood among Democrats was. And it feels like the entire political world has been turned on its head, because what you're seeing is the shift of the entire focus of this race to this, what kind of a future are we going to have, in a way that, frankly, Joe Biden wasn't going to be able to do that. He wasn't going to bring that energy. You weren't going to see this kind of enthusiasm. And this passing of the torch has been close to seamless, which, again, was not necessarily inevitable a week ago. So a week ago, we were thinking, like, what is this election going to be like? Could it be like a 1980 Republican blowout? Today, and I don't think there's any precedent for the kind of, you know, quick start enthusiasm that we're seeing right now. But think about the election in 1960, John F. Kennedy. Think about 1992, Bill Clinton talking about change. Think about 2008, when Barack Obama was the voice of change. And this feels far more like that now than at any time in this campaign. So the campaign that we were all sort of girding for and dreading has now been utterly and completely transformed. And I'm not downplaying the challenges and what the Republicans will do to try to define Kamala Harris, but the fact that, and don't also sleep on the fact that she's given 4 big speeches in 4 days. The energy that she's bringing to this and the organic enthusiasm, you know, I'm always trying to balance out what's hype and what's real. This is pretty extraordinary what you're seeing on the ground and in social media.
Yeah, no, it's all very real. I think there has been a hunger since 2016 to see the fight brought to Donald Trump in exactly this manner. To move, as Judge Esther Salas, her mantra is love is light, to move into the light and have the fight there is exactly where the fight needs to be waged. And the polls already reflect what Charlie's articulating, Kim. Let me show you what the New York Times Siena poll has today. Among likely voters, and this is July 22nd to the 24th, so that's Monday through Wednesday. This is all post-convention. Donald Trump's at 48, Kamala Harris is at 47. It's just an extraordinary move from June 28th to July 2nd, where Trump was at 49. He's actually gone down a point after his convention and after the events of the weekend in Pennsylvania. And Kamala Harris is up 4 points ahead of where President Biden was. Talk about this reset, which is palpable, reportable, and visible in the polls.
Yeah, I mean, those polls, I believe, are reflecting a lot of things, not only just the past anxiety and angst that that gripped Democrats right after the debate, but also in the time that the voters have had to get to know and focus on Kamala Harris. They're realizing that she's a candidate that really, in so many ways, her message is perfect for this moment. Democrats have been focused on what? Reproductive rights. Since Dobbs was overturned, that has been probably the greatest issue driving the elections since that decision. They care about climate. They have in Kamala Harris somebody who has put that in the center of her political message since the time that she was a district attorney. And then they have someone who cares very much about other rights of people. We have a Supreme Court that not only attacked reproductive rights, but is eyeing other rights, such as for LGBTQ folks. And Kamala Harris was marrying people in California, same-sex couples, while Barack Obama was still talking about civil union. She has a long history, a long track record on the very issues that are driving the electorate right now. You have the enthusiasm, which is important. People will activate when they see enthusiasm around a candidate, and it really blunts this idea that some people are like, "Oh, America's not ready for a woman; they're not ready for a black woman." I think this is showing that America can be, if you just have the enthusiasm and the support of that candidate behind them. And I think that can allow Democrats to turn that important corner from 2016 or even 2020 and during the primary, when I still heard a lot of Democrats worrying that even though they liked Kamala Harris or Elizabeth Warren, they were worried that other people wouldn't vote for them. Now we're saying if you support her and you vote for her, she'll win.
Kim, isn't the answer to all those questions, America isn't ready for a felon and an insurrectionist and an adjudicated sexual abuser? I mean, I feel like that question is gone in so many ways. The question is erased by the regret and the remorse about 2016. The question is erased by the sort of stellar conduct of this vice president, as Joe Biden's partner on the campaign trail during those 4 weeks that were excruciating for everyone inside the pro-democracy coalition, by the last 4 days, but also by everyone that looks over at the other choice. That party opted for a convicted felon. That party opted for someone as recently as last year in a sworn deposition whose position is still that when you're famous, you can grab women between the legs because, quote, that's what famous people have been doing for 1 million years. Not sure how he knows that. Who's also been charged with serious felonies regarding the mishandling of state secrets and the inciting of a deadly insurrection in which his own vice president. I mean, are we ready for what? I don't know who you're asking. I don't know who that question is posed to when the other choice would be America's first ever convicted felon and adjudicated sexual abuser.
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I know there are a lot of folks who would say, you know, they'd vote for a rock over someone who, as you just described, Donald Trump. But I think what is one thing that is driving the enthusiasm around Kamala Harris is the fact that she presents that contrast so clearly. The contrast between the future and the past, where we have been. People are remembering, some with PTSD, the Trump administration and the handling, the bungling of the COVID response and the economic problems and the hate and the vengeance and just terrible feeling of that era. And they're seeing this hopefulness. Plus, she's a prosecutor, and as you point out, who better to prosecute the case against Donald Trump, especially since he has been, in many ways, held to be above the law, whether it's from the inability of a Supreme Court to allow him to be prosecuted for crimes that he consulted, to the way that he has attacked people. Who has been holding him accountable? I think that's one thing that's making America ready. They have seen folks like Fani Willis, like Letitia James, be like Alvin Bragg, actually have some accountability. And so now you have another prosecutor who is a smart lawyer who also happens to be a woman of color. Those are the folks that have been getting this job done. So what better opponent for Donald Trump to face in November?
You know, Clara, it is all future looking. It is wrapped in this message about fighting for freedom, but it isn't precious. Let me share this perfect troll of Donald Trump's appearance on Fox and Friends. The Harris campaign issued this statement. After watching Fox News this morning, we only have one question. Is Donald Trump okay? He praised Project 2025. He's flustered and lashing out. When he isn't lying, he's making threats. Abortion bans are good. Mail-in voting is bad. He's praising dictators because he wants to be one. Worried he made the wrong pick in J.D. Vance. Old and weird. This guy shouldn't ever be president again. If anyone wants an alternative, Kamala Harris is offering one. It is, at this point, certainly firing on all those cylinders of offering this positive message for the future, making a very sharp contrast, as Kim said, but not neglecting the ever important getting under the skin of one's opponent.
Yeah, she's not afraid to do that. You know, Kamala Harris is confident enough to be loose. And by that, I mean, she'll throw some punches. She's not afraid to throw punches. I watched her in hearings when she knew how to make a point, and she would not let the witness up until the point was made. And she did it very, very effectively. And she's going to be able to do that with this guy. And now he is the old guy who can't finish a sentence, and he can't escape that. He can't escape that. That is now seared into the hard drive of every swing voter in America. So and they're going to come after her. Yes, they're going to come after her. But I got to tell you, they've got a couple of problems. And one of the things is this extremism. Most swing voters don't like extremism. They've voted for both parties. They're not consuming politics 24/7 like we are. They are not checking in constantly. They get broad themes. And this is really extreme. This J.D. Vance, now keep in mind, not 20 years ago, not when he was in college, just in the last few months as a United States Senator, he voted against protecting IVF. He voted against protecting contraception, birth control, and maybe the most telling vote of all, only 28 senators voted with him. He voted to allow law enforcement to get the medical records of women in America. He thinks it's okay for the police to get medical records. That's jaw-dropping to most swing voters. Not acceptable in America.
Well, and Charlie, he's against Donald Trump in the ways we've been talking about since he was selected, believes Donald Trump is America's Hitler. That's a quote. Cultural heroin. That's a quote. Believes his accusers. He's also expressed decades or years of disdain against Donald Trump's family. He thinks women should stay in marriages if they're unhappy and violent. The top of the ticket has a modern family, the likes of which, J.D. Vance doesn't seem to approve of. He's sort of a cultural scold on a with Donald Trump.
Well, he is a cultural scold, but as you read about some of the votes that J.D. Vance has taken, the comments that he's made, it did cross my mind. Did Donald Trump actually vet this guy, or were they just thinking, "Hey, I just like the cut of his jib. I'm gonna go with him," because clearly there's a real possibility that he could be a liability here, particularly when women hear what he is saying in this new contrast. But can I just step back and talk about that poll for a moment, showing this race being closed? Just keep in mind that traditionally the week after a national party convention, the nominee has a significant bump, maybe 8 to 10 points. Now, maybe that doesn't happen anymore. But think again where Donald Trump was 1 week ago today before he accepted. The goodwill that was surrounded him after the assassination. Then he has this really, unified convention, and he names the vice president, and he accepts the nomination. In normal politics, he would be flying high this week. The Democrats would have their chance later, but there's no bump whatsoever. And then you also look at Kamala Harris. I mean, she's had an amazing 4 days, but this comes after 3 years where, let's be honest, most voters haven't been paying attention to what she's doing. They really don't know her. And she has been underestimated in the political world, in the media, even among her fellow Democrats. One of the things that shaped this moment were a lot of Democrats said we have to stick with Biden because Kamala would be too risky. And now in the last 4 days, she's come out in this very effective way. And so I think you set aside the poll today, because I think things are so fluid. But the fact that she is doing that well under these circumstances really shouldn't be overlooked.
It's such an important point. This is him potentially at sort of a political apex with the most favorable events and light and attention. And this is her basically sort of thrown out there. This is all her. These are her instincts.
Yeah.
This is her ability to crystallize a message, animate the base. And this is you're right, it is an important, we don't always focus on the polls, but this is a really important moment in the race. Charlie Sykes, thank you for underscoring that. Kim Atkinstor, thank you for starting us off. Claire sticks around with us for the hour. When we come back, as we told you, Vice President Kamala Harris gave her first big pitch to union workers as the 2024 presidential candidate. It was before the powerful teachers union, one of the first big groups to endorse her. The union's president, our friend Randy Weingarten, joins us next on the vice president's message to those 1.8 million teachers in our country. Plus, Andrew Weissman's back with us to talk about the Harris campaign's message of the prosecutor versus the felon. And later in the broadcast, the very weird views of the Republican ticket, their thoughts on child rearing, voting, and wind. All those stories and more when Deadline White House continues after a quick break. Don't go anywhere.
What does a robot know about love? How to translate that leap inside the human heart into something we can see and hold. The fingerprints we leave behind show how determined we are to give the world a piece of ourselves. Etsy.
You've got too much on your plate to worry about what to put on it next. That's where we come in. We're Factor, your one-stop shop for fresh, fully prepared meals, packed with premium ingredients and ready to heat and eat in 2 minutes flat. Did we mention delivered right to your door? Yeah, we got that covered too. Looks like eating well just got a whole lot easier.
Visit factormeals.com/peacock50 and use code peacock50 for 50% off.
I've always been prone to hair thinning.
I'm genetically predisposed.
I just gave birth. I was under a lot of stress.
I started taking Nutrafol.
We test our formulations with the highest rigor of clinical trials, and we're the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement.
I noticed it becoming
stronger and thicker.
Nutrafol has taken me back to the hair I was meant to have.
I am back to me.
Start your hair growth journey at Nutrafol.com.
Talent's here.
Get him on set now.
What's this for exactly?
And action.
Insurify, help me save.
Louder.
Insurify, help me save. I'm sorry, is this another car insurance ad?
No. Insurify actually compares insurance rates to show you which one will save you money.
Wow. Insurify helped me save more than $996 in just a few minutes. Insurify compares rates side by side. The best part is it's entirely free to use, so you can choose the best car insurance option for you.
Compare and save with Insurify.
Looks like he's signing up for Insurify.com.
Saturday, September 7th, Brooklyn, New York. It's MSNBC Live Democracy 2024, our premier live audience event. Maddow, Psaki, Mitchell, Reed, Hayes, Steele, Menendez, Sanders-Townsend, O'Donnell, Wagner, Rule, Melber, Kornacki, and more. Join the MSNBC community in conversation. Visit msnbc.com/democracy 2024 to buy your tickets today.
am a proud product of public education. Many of you know that my first grade teacher, Mrs. Frances Wilson, God rest her soul, taught me and educated me and encouraged me and inspired me. And years later, when I walked across the stage to receive my law school diploma, Mrs. Frances Wilson was in the audience. So it is because of Mrs. Wilson and so many teachers like her that I stand before you as Vice President of the United States of America. And that I am running to become President of the United States of America.
It was Vice President Kamala Harris today speaking to America's largest teachers union in Houston, Texas. That enthusiasm just leaps out. That organic joy behind her candidacy has now become a consistent element of each event of the vice president's campaign so far, as she and her party are seeing every corner of the coalition needed to elect her come out in full force to endorse her. The audience she was speaking to today, the American Federation of Teachers, was the first major union to endorse the vice president's bid for the White House. Joining our conversation, the president of the American Federation of Teachers, our friend Randi Weingarten. She had a one-on-one meeting with the vice president this morning. Claire's here as well and is going to jump in on the questioning, Randi. Randi, when I found out you were going to be here today, I was so excited, and I thought about just our conversations have tracked the country's journey, right? We started talking, I think, almost daily during the pandemic about the tragedy and about the loss, right? And about the grief and about being strong for our kids and about worrying about teachers being safe. It wasn't just kids missing class, it was teachers being erased. And then I thought about all that you've faced, the attacks you've faced, right? Being a having a modern family. I mean, everything is right here in front of us. And I wonder what you think about the state of the race and this fourth day of Vice President Kamala Harris's run for the presidency.
So first, Nicolle, it has been so wonderful to see you back and see you on and see you glowing, so let me just say that. It's, you're welcome. The arc, well, this is what I've seen in the last few days. It's like a revival meeting. And it's not that people don't respect or love Joe Biden and respect what this administration has done. You can see I don't have a voice anymore, that they have done. But there's a sense of joy with the fight. Not just we have to fight the bad stuff, but we have to fight for this vision. And she's become this emissary of the fight for imagining a future of freedom and opportunity based upon what the Biden-Harris administration has done already, and fighting the darkness and the bleakness and the lies and the disinformation and the smears of Donald Trump and his party. And so what I saw this week, we had our convention in Texas yet, but we brought all these folks down. We weren't going to boycott Texas. And I saw this electricity just grow to, you saw it in the hall, in a sense of we are going to fight for our future and a future for all. And that's what teachers and nurses do all the time anyway, but it was electric.
I want to show more of it. Let me just play a little bit more of it today about what you're talking about the fight for the future.
You may not be a union member, but you should thank unions, and I'm looking to the cameras in the back of the room. Not them, but the people who might be watching. You may not be a union member, but thank unions for the 5-day work week. For the 8-hour workday. Thank unions for sick leave and paid family leave and vacation time. Because the fact is, unions helped build America's middle class. And when unions are strong, America is strong.
She is so fluent in sort of the language of freedom and strength and the future. It's sort of the three, to the degree that any of the study of American political science is still relevant. Those really are the touchstones, and she has seized them in such a remarkable and natural and seemingly effortless way.
And I think you're right about her fluency with it. It's real. Like, you saw when you replayed it, like some space in between. And that was the roar of the crowd. Like the roar of the crowd stopped her from being able to finish her, for being able to go from her line to line to line. But I think what she does as well, and you said this in terms of the first question to me, because you watched that journey that I've gone on. It is fear versus hope. It is banning books versus banning assault weapons. It is this vilifying and relentless attempt to put us in a crouched position that we would question ourselves, as opposed to imagining a future where all Americans, all families had a better life. And so I think the fluidity, the fluency here is not just in being able to paint a picture that we're entitled to a future of dignity and respect and of freedom, but there's a real contrast between what Donald Trump has said in his darkness and his bleakness and his otherizing, anybody who he doesn't believe is entitled.
Randy, Claire McCaskill, I'd like to talk to you a little bit. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the Democrats and particularly the Vice President's support of public schools and teachers, compared with what the Republicans have done to teachers over the last several years. Frankly, if somebody would have told me that a major political party would decide teachers were the enemy, I would say, well, that's dumb. But that's what they've done. And I know that some schools are struggling to fill their ranks of teachers because of what Republicans have done in terms of making them somehow the enemy, even though they are working for less than they should, doing more than they should have to educate our kids. And I specifically would like you to address rural communities because I was born in a rural community, and I know in rural communities across America, there's basically two institutions. You hope there's a medical facility, a healthcare clinic, and public schools. And the fact that J.D. Vance and the fact that Donald Trump have never, ever supported public schools and what they mean to, frankly, red America. Do you see an opportunity here that your teachers can be on the front lines explaining to people who live in rural America that it's Kamala Harris that has the back of the public school system and the teachers that make it work?
So absolutely yes, 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 and yes. So Claire, I think the example from Texas is so illustrative. And what we have, well, let me just take a step back and say, the AFT is not the old AFT. We are now 1.8 million members. We actually grew about 85,000 members in the last couple of years, about 185 new units. We've never grown this fast since our beginning. And we are in lots of pockets between healthcare. We're now the fastest growing healthcare union. Between healthcare and schools, we're in lots of rural pockets. And this is what we see. If you take the politics out of this, which I know we can't, but if you do, look at Texas. Texas legislators actually stymied Governor Abbott 5 times on vouchers. And what was the coalition? It was our union. It was pastors. It was Republican rural legislators, and it was urban Democratic legislators. And because of exactly what you said, you got a post office maybe, you got a restaurant maybe, you have a school and hopefully you have some kind of medical care. And that becomes the anchors in rural communities. And so when somebody attempts to take away that by just using all sorts of vouchers that regular folks don't use anyway, the voucher money is basically going to people who already send their kids to vouchers, to private schools or religious schools. You are basically stripping a community of their community center. And so this is both pulling communities apart. But the second thing it's doing, and I want to raise this as well, and Nicolle and I have spent a lot of time talking about this, it's an attack on knowledge, and it's an attack on critical thinking, and it's an attack on relationship building. What do we have to do for kids in the 21st century? We have to get them to be able to navigate their lives, to be able to build relationships, to be able to see context, to be able to critically think. And so when you start bullying teachers and not letting them answer questions of kids, or not letting them teach honest history, or making the laws so vague that they don't know, that they're walking on eggshells, you are actually attacking knowledge. And that is what I think is most venal about what's going on. Teachers have never been paid what they should be. They should be paid a lot more. The schools have never been as good as, never had the conditions that they should. And in this climate issue, with all the climate issues, we really have to address all the climate, all the heat issues and things like that. Asthma is rampant. But this issue of not being able to meet kids' needs, that's what's most venal. And then the second issue is just stripping schools of the monies that they need.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there's so much more to talk about. Randy, we're going to put you on the hook for a regular segment, because it comes back to where we started, right? It's fear. I mean, the kids can't be served by any grown-up who is in fear and in this crouch that you described, literally and figuratively. Randy Weingarten, thank you for being here today on such an historic day. To be continued with me and Claire. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you.
Up next for us, Claire sticks around, and Andrew Weissman joins us on the Harris campaign's pledge to highlight her history as a prosecutor against Trump's legal woes. We'll check in with him about how it's landing.
I knew that something was different. I knew it, I called it, and look what I found today.
It's Blue Chew.
Blue Chew.
Blue Chew?
Blue Chew. Blue Chew. Blue Chew.
Blue Chew. The Holy Grail. This is the secret. If you don't know, now you know. You can get it on a subscription model, so men can get delivered every month. And for the ladies, let your man know, and you're welcome in advance.
How am I gonna find a doctor when I'm hallucinating? What do you think, Fever Monster?
What about Sock Doc?
Sock Doc?
Dr. Castell has a great bedside manner.
So many options.
But Dr. Shi-chan will take your sketchy insurance. Shi-chan, 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 Shi-chan.
Thanks, bro.
You've got more options than you know. Book now.
Precise designs, subtle curves, curated upgrades. Custom configurations create a space that's uniquely timeless, yet distinctly personal. Elevated design for thoughtful living. Thuma.
The Play Kits by Love Every are here to help with every milestone from ages 0 to 5. Delivered just in time for each stage of development. The Play Kits will be there to help your babies learn to roll over on the day they take their first steps, on the day they say their first word, on their first time helping out. There's something for every milestone. Try the Play Kits by Love Every, designed by experts for your child's developing brain.
Hey, I'm Adrian, inventor of the carry-on closet. Most of my life I've traveled with ordinary luggage, until one day I imagined how to make a luggage that could be extraordinary. This is the carry-on closet, the suitcase with a one-of-a-kind patented closet system that keeps you organized anywhere. Pack all you need for up to 10 days and travel without ever unpacking. Oh, and for each suitcase sold, we save 6 pounds of plastic from entering our oceans through innovative river barriers. The comfort of home on the go. Unpack in seconds at soulguard.co.
What you doing?
Just buying a car on Carvana.
You are not.
Yeah, it's super convenient. I already got pre-qualified in 2 minutes.
Say what? That's fast.
Yeah, it is. Oh, look, I can customize my terms.
Say what? Custom down and monthly payments?
Yep. And just like that, my car is getting delivered in a couple days.
Say what? Delivered? Where we live?
Right here.
Right here.
Here.
Car shopping made unbelievably convenient. Finance and buy your car with Carvana today.
One of the things I like about what I get to do is that each day is pretty unique. I might find out that there's not a lot of new numbers in the world today, and so today's going to be a day I'm going to spend researching. The only way to really be prepared is to get it all in my brain ahead of time.
They get me to that position, and then their campaign says, I'm the prosecutor, and he is the convicted felon. That's their campaign. I don't think people are going to buy it.
He's just so mad about it. This campaign is becoming Donald Trump's worst nightmare. The contrast between his criminal record and Vice President Kamala Harris's record of law and order and accomplishment. Donald Trump is melting down as Kamala Harris owns the message of being tough on crime. And it's getting a little weird. Trump followed up last night's out-of-control rally with a freewheeling, rambling, nonsensical 30 minutes on Fox and Friends this morning. Within minutes, the Harris campaign trolled the ex-president with an email with the subject line statement on a 78-year-old criminal's Fox News appearance, as we showed you earlier, highlighting his criminality. If you needed any more proof, in an endorsement given first to NBC News, former DOJ officials are backing Vice President Harris, saying this, quote, "The fabric of the nation, the rule of law, and the future of the democracy are at stake in this election." Joining our conversation, former top prosecutor at the Department of Justice and MSNBC legal analyst Andrew Weissman is back. Claire's still here as well. Andrew Weissman, this letter just moved. Let me don my glasses and read a little bit from it. Former and current Justice Department employees believe that a future President Harris, a former prosecutor, unlike Trump, would respect the norms that have been in place to ensure DOJ independence in the half-century since Watergate. Those fears of another Trump term are central to a new letter endorsing Harris, signed by more than 40 former Justice Department officials who served under presidents of both parties. They include former Attorney General Loretta Lynch, former Deputy Attorneys General Sally Yates, David Ogden, and Jamie Gorelick, and John McKay, who was appointed as a top federal prosecutor in Washington state during the George W. Bush administration, among others. Your thoughts?
You know, Nicolle, you and I have talked about how Donald Trump is running as sort of the outlaw president, and that sort of it's not just that he has been convicted. I mean, he can, denigrate that all he want, but he actually was found guilty by a jury of 34 felonies and is facing 2 other indictments. But he also embraces the January 6th defendants, including those who have attacked law enforcement officers, and talked about pardoning them. He had Peter Navarro, fresh off his prison stay, address the RNC, which was remarkable. He had Paul Manafort at the RNC. You have Rudy Giuliani there. I mean, this is somebody who, both in his own persona and in terms of everything he's saying and the people he surrounds himself with, is the antithesis, really the outlaw to what Kamala Harris represents and has represented in her life and in her career. It's no surprise to me that you'd have former Department of Justice officials and, frankly, anybody who believes in the rule of law, but certainly those people who, like me, who committed a huge part of their life to the rule of law, seeing this as a really clear contrast, regardless of what you think of their other policies.
You know, you go back to the arc of Donald Trump's obsession with dirtying up the Biden family. I mean, he's impeached the first time because he wants dirt on the Bidens. He never contemplated that he'd run against someone who he couldn't dirty up in this area of law and order. I mean, there were concerns during the Democratic primary in 2020, and Claire knows this well, that she was too tough on crime, that would be sort of political baggage for her. I mean, this is sort of an unimpeachable temperamental ability to prosecute a case, a campaign, a witness on the Senate Judiciary Committee. And really, for the first time, some asymmetry that disadvantages Donald Trump in the area of law and order, Claire.
Yeah, it is. First of all, it is really interesting to me that he is still hanging on to this idea that being convicted helps him. You know, all the T-shirts at the Republican National Convention, I'm voting for the convicted felon. Keep in mind now, Nicolle, there's really just two parts of this campaign. And as you mentioned before, she's going to be very disciplined about this. Kamala Harris knows this. One is the swing voter that didn't like their choices a few weeks ago and who hadn't made up their mind finally and is not paying really close attention. And then the base of the party, getting them out, making them enthusiastic. Well, she's got both bases covered because we know from the data that has been gathered ever since Donald Trump egged on an insurrection and bragged about not having to follow the law. Ever since that happened, we know those swing voters don't like it. They don't like it that a president has been charged criminally. They don't like it that a president has been convicted. I'm not talking about the base that's at the Republican convention. I'm talking about the voters that are going to decide this election. And so her line where she said, I know Donald, I've prosecuted sexual predators, I've prosecuted fraudsters, I've prosecuted people who think they're above the law. I know Donald Trump's type. That is a perfect crystallization of what will move those independent voters, those swing voters in those suburbs and in those states that she has to win to get to 270 electoral votes. And at the same time, she's doing it with joy and with a brightness and with looking to the future. And that's going to build the enthusiasm, especially among the younger voters that Biden was struggling with.
I have to sneak in a break, but I want to read more from this letter on the other side. And I want to come back to something we've spent years now talking about, the stakes for the rule of law in November's election. Andrew and Claire, stick around. Don't go anywhere.
You've got too much on your plate to worry about what to put on it next. That's where we come in. We're Factor, your one-stop shop for fresh, fully prepared meals, packed with premium ingredients and ready to heat and eat in 2 minutes flat. Did we mention delivered right to your door? Yeah, we got that covered too. Looks like eating well just got a whole lot easier.
Visit factormeals.com/peacock50 and use code peacock50 for 50% off.
Democracy is egalitarian, which means it's for everyone. But it also, I think, is a divinely inspired gift of our forefathers to show us that we can lead ourselves.
One of the things I like about what I get to do is that each day is pretty unique. I might find out that there's not a lot of new numbers in the world today, and so today's going to be a day I'm going to spend researching. The only way to really be prepared is to get it all in my brain ahead of time.
and then their campaign says, I'm the prosecutor, and he is the convicted felon.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
I mean, it's all message now, Andrew Weissman, and none of it, based on today's new poll, helping Donald Trump.
And let's just look forward. This issue of his status as a convicted felon is going to change in September because he has a hearing where he is extremely likely, based on the filings that have been made, to be sentenced in the middle of September by Judge Merchan for the 34 felony counts he was found guilty of by a jury. And so that sentencing is going to happen in September. You will have truly a convicted, sentenced defendant who is the Republican nominee. And on the other hand, you will have somebody who was and is the vice president and a former prosecutor. And I think that's why you're also seeing Donald Trump having a lot of trouble with his sort of naming convention, the way he tries to tag people, because Kamala Harris has gone from Laughing Kamala, which I'm not really sure why that's some denigrating moniker that he's attached to, Lying. And that's sort of the best he's been able to come up with. And I think it's to your point, Nicolle, which is you really have this strong contrast between law and order and the rule of law, and somebody who I think in very short order will be a sentenced convicted defendant.
You know, Claire, I don't want to gloss over this letter that we came in on. I mean, other than the generals, there's no group of people more reluctant to step into partisan politics than kind of folks that take the top jobs, people like Andrew, frankly. And so this letter, let me read a little bit more of it to you, Claire. Even before Trump tried to weaponize the Justice Department and get his appointees to help overturn the presidential election he lost, culminating in January 6th, the attack on the U.S. Capitol, Justice Department officials of both parties expressed worry during the 2020 campaign that a second Trump term would put the Justice Department past the point of no return. Trump jump roped the line of independence between the Justice Department and the White House during his time in office, worrying DOJ observers then and now that a second term for him would obliterate that firewall completely. That's exactly what the Project 2025 blueprint has in mind, has in store.
The freshest milk, 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 check. The freshest bread, the freshest bread, the freshest bread, the freshest bread, the freshest.
For kids, summer break is the best. But for parents, well, that's why Care.com makes it easy to find childcare that fits your summer schedule. From long-term nannies and daycare to date night babysitters, join the millions of families who've trusted us and connect with background-checked caregivers in your area, so you can have a summer break that doesn't break you. Go to Care.com now.
You're finally on vacation, but can't help but worry that something isn't right back home. With MyQ, home is just a touch away. MyQ is the only smart home security solution that provides video monitoring, real-time notifications, and lets you decide who comes in and who stays out, all in one easy-to-use app. So take that well-deserved break
MyQ has you covered.
Whether it's your future health, your future income, or your future happiness, becoming an AARP member today can help. Join for just $12 for the first year with automatic renewal and get a second membership free. Plus, you'll receive an insulated trunk organizer. Call or go online today, because the younger you are, the more you need AARP.
Hi, I'm Christina. And I'm Gina, and we're co-founders of Senya, a modular jewelry brand based in New York. We've used Fiverr for everything from videography to logo design to social media marketing to 3D design. Our next goal is to expand from just jewelry into fashion. Fiverr really will power our clothing line launch because we have access to experts who can create tech packs, videography, photography, even sketches, and just help us bring our dreams to life.
In the Waberhood, every delivery is a treat.
One pistachio for you, sir.
One strawberry poof, please.
Oh! Enjoy it.
Oh, perfect.
Bye, Waber. Something minty? Of course, it's a large.
A double. Lucky.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
I think the issue that will determine who wins this election is the question of freedom. Freedom over your own body for women, freedom to read, freedom for parents of LGBTQ kids to parent them, whether you're talking about state races, local races, congressional races, or the race for president. The freedom question is actually the most important question on the ballot, really.
These are weird people on the other side. They want to take books away. They want to be in your exam room. That's what it comes down to. And don't, get sugarcoating this. These are weird ideas. Listen to them speak. Listen how they talk about things.
That's one way to put it. Hi again, everybody. It's 5 o'clock now in the East. For all the billions to be spent on political advertising before this election is over, maybe the message and the contrast is as simple as that. Yes, Donald Trump represents a grave threat to our democracy. Yes, the GOP wants to turn back the clock on our rights, some 60 years. But at a more basic human, busy person level, the modern Republican Party, its policies, the lawmakers who come up with them are, as was said there, they're weird, deeply and profoundly weird. So let's do as Minnesota Governor Tim Walz suggested there. He's on the short list for Kamala Harris's vice president, after all, and listen to how Republicans talk about things, like women, for example, and our place in the modern American family. One of J.D. Vance's weirdest observations of Vice President Kamala Harris has racked up 30 million views online since Monday. Watch it.